My name is Pauline, and I'm 34 years old. I'm standing in my corner office overlooking Manhattan. And 3 years ago, my sister Diana laughed when I quit our family business. Her words still echo in my mind. You won't last a week without us. Today, I'm signing the papers that will acquire their entire company. Everything they built over 40 years now belongs to me. Before I tell you how I destroyed everything they built, let me know where you're watching from. If you've ever been underestimated by family, hit that subscribe button, because this story is for you. Working for my family's luxury hotel chain, Sterling Heritage Hotels, felt like living in a golden cage. My father, Robert Sterling, had built his empire from a single rundown motel in 1985 into 15 properties scattered across the East Coast. Each hotel represented years of his sweat and determination, and he never let any of us forget it. My sister Diana, 3 years older than me, held the title of Chief Financial Officer. She walked through our headquarters like she owned every inch of marble flooring, and in father's eyes, she practically did. My brother Marcus served as chief operating officer, though his operations seemed to consist mainly of long lunches with clients and golf meetings that somehow never produced any actual deals. And then there was me. Despite handling all vendor relations, managing staff across multiple properties, and keeping our operations running smoothly, my business card read simply, Assistant Manager. No executive title, no recognition, just Pauline, the reliable one who made sure everything worked while others took the credit. I remember the vendor negotiations that nearly broke me. For 6 months, I worked with our suppliers, researching market rates, building relationships, creating detailed proposals. When I finally presented a new contract structure that would save us $2 million annually, Diana sat in that boardroom and presented my work as her own. Father praised her brilliant financial mind, while I sat there, invisible my spreadsheets with her name now attached to them. Marcus wasn't any better. Every expansion proposal I developed, every market analysis I conducted, would somehow find its way into his presentations. The Miami Beach property turnaround plan took me 3 months to develop. I studied every aspect of that failing hotel, from its outdated booking system to its terrible customer service reviews. My plan was comprehensive, innovative, and would have transformed it into our flagship property. When I presented it to the family board, Father barely looked up from his phone. Diana called it cute that I was trying to think strategically. 2 weeks later, Diana presented nearly the same plan, with minor modifications, claiming she'd been working on it for months. Father approved it immediately, praising his brilliant firstborn for her vision. My mother, Eleanor, played her role perfectly in this family theater. Whenever I tried to talk to her about the situation, she'd pat my hand and say, "Just support your sister, dear. Family comes first." She'd pour another glass of wine and change the subject to charity galas or her book club. For 12 years, I dedicated everything to Sterling Heritage Hotels. 80-hour weeks were my normal. I missed birthdays, canceled vacations, and lost relationships. James, the man I thought I'd marry, left after 3 years of watching me give everything to people who gave nothing back. His parting words haunted me. "You're pouring yourself into a bucket with no bottom, Pauline. They'll never value what you give them because they think they're entitled to it." The Thanksgiving dinner that year should have been my wake-up call. As we sat around Mother's perfectly decorated table, they discussed the company's 5-year plan without even looking in my direction. Diana outlined her vision for digital transformation, using ideas from a proposal I'd written 6 months earlier. Marcus talked about expanding into the West Coast market's territories I'd researched extensively. Father nodded approvingly at his two executives while I passed the cranberry sauce. That night, I went through our company records, something I'd never done before. The salary disparities made me physically sick. Diana was pulling $400,000 a year plus bonuses. Marcus made $350,000 with a company car and expense account that seemed to cover everything from his bar tabs to his weekend trips to Vegas. My salary, $65,000, less than some of our hotel managers made. I'd been subsidizing their success with my labor, while they prospered from my ideas. Every innovation I'd brought to the company had someone else's name on it. Every problem I'd solved had become someone else's victory. Every late night I'd spent fixing their mistakes had been forgotten by morning. The worst part was how they'd convinced me this was normal. Family businesses run on sacrifice, Father would say, usually right after Diana took credit for another one of my projects. We all have our roles to play, Mother would add while planning another elaborate party to celebrate Diana's latest achievement that was actually mine. But I kept showing up. Every morning I'd drive to that gleaming headquarters building park in my assigned spot in the back corner of the garage and take the service elevator to avoid the awkward executive elevator rides where Diana and Marcus would discuss business like I wasn't there. I'd smile at the staff who knew I was the one they could count on, the one who actually solved their problems, while my siblings held court in the executive dining room. The Miami property success should have changed things. After Diana's presentation of my plan, I was sent to oversee the implementation, of course, without any credit or authority. I transformed that property in 6 months. Occupancy went from 40% to 92%. Customer satisfaction scores hit record highs. The staff who knew the truth started calling me the real boss when the executives weren't around. None of it mattered. When the hotel industry magazine wanted to do a feature on the turnaround, Diana flew down for the photo shoot. She gave interviews about her strategic vision while I coordinated the actual operations in the background. The article called her a visionary leader. My name appeared once in the last paragraph as one of the implementation team members. December brought everything to a devastating climax. The quarterly board meeting was supposed to be routine, but I'd spent weeks preparing something special. Despite being consistently overlooked, I still believed that good work would eventually speak for itself. This time, I'd created something undeniable, a revolutionary digital transformation plan that would change everything. My presentation covered every detail. I'd researched artificial intelligence-driven pricing systems that could adjust room rates in real time based on demand, weather, local events, and dozens of other factors. The virtual concierge system I designed would handle 60% of guest requests, automatically freeing staff to provide more personalized service where it mattered. I'd even negotiated preliminary partnerships with 3 major tech companies who were eager to use our hotels as testing grounds for their hospitality innovations. The numbers were staggering. My conservative projections showed a 40% revenue increase within 18 months. Customer satisfaction would improve while operating costs decreased. We'd become industry leaders instead of followers. I'd even created a phased implementation plan that minimized risk and disruption. I stood at the front of that boardroom laser pointer, steady despite my nerves, and walked through each slide with passion I hadn't felt in years. This was my chance to finally prove my worth beyond any doubt. The data was irrefutable. The opportunity was massive. The plan was flawless. Diana let me finish before she spoke. She leaned back in her leather chair, the one that cost more than most people's monthly salary, and actually laughed. Everyone, she announced to the room, Pauline's little internet project is adorable, but we need to focus on real business, not fantasy. She pulled up her own presentation, quarterly financials, that showed modest growth using traditional methods. Marcus jumped in, eager to support his ally. Maybe assistant managers shouldn't pretend to understand strategy, he said, getting chuckles from 2 of the external board members. We can't risk the family legacy on untested theories from someone who's never run anything bigger than a staff meeting. Father's dismissal hurt the most. He didn't even pretend to consider my proposal. Pauline, leave the real business to the executives, he said, already moving to the next agenda item. Your job is to support their vision, not create your own. I gathered my materials in silence, my face burning with humiliation. As I walked toward the door, I heard Diana tell the board they'd need to manage my expectations better. She's getting ideas above her station, she said loud enough for me to hear. It happens sometimes with support staff. The parking garage was empty and cold when Diana found me loading my presentation materials into my car. She must have followed me down, eager to twist the knife deeper. Her heels clicked against the concrete as she approached, that familiar smirk playing on her lips. You need to understand something, she said, blocking my car door. You're support staff, Pauline. You've always been support staff. Accept it, and everyone's life gets easier. I found my voice for the first time in years. I've carried this company for over a decade. You know it. Father knows it. Everyone knows it. She laughed, that same dismissive sound from the boardroom. Carried the company? You're delusional. You're a worker bee, Pauline. Worker bees don't get to pretend they're queens. The next words changed everything. I'm done being your safety net. I'm done letting you take credit for my work. I'm done. Diana's expression shifted to something cruel and calculating. Oh, really? And where would you go? You have no real experience, at least none that anyone would recognize. No connections outside this family. No references that don't go through us. She stepped closer, her perfume suffocating in the enclosed space. You're nothing without the sterling name, and you can't take that with you. Then came the words that would fuel my transformation. You wouldn't last a week without this family. A week, Pauline. You'd come crawling back begging for your little assistant manager role, and we'd have to decide if you're worth the trouble of rehiring. I said nothing more. I got in my car and drove home, her laughter echoing in the garage behind me. That night, I wrote my resignation letter. 2 sentences. Effective immediately, I resign from all positions at Sterling Heritage Hotels. I wish you all the best. I placed it on Father's desk at midnight using my key one last time. The building was silent except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of night cleaning crews. I looked at his office at the awards and photos covering the walls, not a single one, including me, and felt something I hadn't expected: relief. The next morning, security was waiting for me. Diana's instructions, the guard apologized, clearly uncomfortable. I was to collect my personal items and leave immediately. They escorted me through the lobby I'd walked through thousands of times past employees who watched in shock to my office, where a cardboard box sat on my desk. 15 years reduced to a box of personal items. A few photos, my coffee mug, the plant I'd kept alive despite the fluorescent lights. Security watched as I packed, making sure I didn't take any company property. As if I'd want anything from this place except my freedom. Diana watched from the executive floor window as I was escorted out. I could see her silhouette, arms crossed, enjoying her victory. Marcus stood beside her, both of them certain they'd put me in my place permanently. They had no idea they'd just lit the fuse that would destroy everything they thought was theirs. The studio apartment in Queens was a harsh awakening from the family estate I'd called home. 500 square feet, a radiator that clanged all-night, neighbors who argued through paper-thin walls. My first night there, I sat on an air mattress, eating Chinese takeout from a container, and wondered if Diana had been right. The job search was brutal. My resume looked impressive until potential employers called for references. Then interviews would suddenly get canceled. Positions would be mysteriously filled. It didn't take long to realize Diana was spreading poison through her network. I heard through a former colleague that she'd been telling everyone I'd had a mental breakdown, that I was unstable, possibly dangerous to have in a professional environment. My savings disappeared faster than I'd imagined. Without the family credit cards, the estate to live in, the company car, I was burning through money just to survive. Groceries, rent, utilities, transportation. It all added up to more than my pathetic salary had ever covered. I'd been subsidized more than I knew, kept dependent on purpose. By January, I was selling everything valuable I owned. The designer clothes Diana had given me for Christmases past, making sure I looked appropriate for a sterling. The jewelry from Mother, each piece a reminder of celebrations, where I stood in the background. The luxury watch Father gave me for my 10th work anniversary, engraved with "Thanks for your support," as if that's all I'd ever be. The heating broke during the coldest week of winter. The landlord said he'd fix it when he could, maybe next week. I sat wrapped in every blanket I owned, watching my breath fog in my own apartment, and came close to calling Father. My fingers hovered over his number a dozen times. One call, one apology, and I could be warm again. But then I'd remember Diana's smirk, Marcus's dismissive laughter, Father's indifference to 12 years of dedication. I deleted his number instead and bought a space heater from a thrift store. The coffee shop on Lexington Avenue became my office. Free Wi-Fi, cheap coffee refills, and warmth I didn't have to pay for. I spent 12 hours a day there, applying for jobs, researching, planning, something though I wasn't sure what yet. The owner, an elderly Korean woman, started saving me the corner table, the one with the outlet that actually worked. That's where I met Benjamin Walsh. He was sitting at the next table, clearly frustrated with his laptop, muttering about technology being designed to torture anyone over 70. I offered to help and spent an hour teaching him to navigate his email. He bought me lunch as thanks, and we started talking. Benjamin Walsh wasn't just any retiree. He'd built and sold 3 hospitality companies over 40 years, retiring as one of the industry's most respected innovators. He remembered me from an industry event years ago, though he was kind enough not to mention I'd been serving drinks while Diana networked. "You're Robert Sterling's daughter," he said, but it wasn't a question. The one who actually runs things. Ran things I corrected. Past tense. He studied me over his coffee cup. "Let me guess. They finally pushed too hard and you walked away. Now they're making sure you can't work anywhere else." His accuracy was unsettling but validating. He'd seen this story before: family businesses that consume their most talented members while elevating their most political ones. Stop trying to work for someone else, he advised. Build something they can't ignore or destroy. That night, he introduced me to Grace Kim via email. Grace was a venture capitalist who specialized in hospitality innovation, someone who'd made her fortune betting on industry outsiders. She agreed to meet me, but her email was clear. "I don't care about your last name or your family drama. Show me an idea worth investing in." I had 2 weeks before our meeting. 2 weeks to create something from nothing. I lived on ramen and instant coffee, every dollar saved going toward research and planning. I studied every trend Diana had dismissed, every innovation Marcus had mocked, every opportunity Father had called too risky. Nexus Stays was born in that freezing apartment. The concept was everything Sterling Heritage Hotels wasn't: tech-integrated boutique properties that adapted to each guest's preferences, artificial intelligence that learned and improved with every interaction, spaces that transformed based on use: conference rooms, becoming yoga studios, becoming art galleries, hotels that were experiences, not just places to sleep. The business plan was 120 pages of market analysis, financial projections, implementation strategies, and competitive advantages. I identified properties in emerging markets Sterling would never consider. I outlined partnerships with tech companies desperate for real-world testing grounds. I created something entirely new, while using everything I'd learned from 12 years of being invisible in boardrooms. Grace Kim gave me 14 hours. That's how long our first meeting lasted. She questioned every assumption, challenged every projection, demanded proof for every claim. She brought in 2 associates who specialized in different aspects of hospitality and technology. They dissected my plan like surgeons looking for any weakness that would kill it in the market. By hour 10, I was exhausted but exhilarated. These people weren't dismissing me or stealing my ideas. They were taking me seriously, pushing me to be better, treating me like an equal. When Grace finally leaned back in her chair at 2 in the morning, she was smiling. "Show me you're more than your last name," she said. "And you've done that. The idea is solid. You're still green on the execution side, but that's teachable. The question is whether you're building this to prove something or to build something." Both, I answered honestly. I want to prove them wrong by building something right. 2 million in seed funding. That was her offer. Enough to start, not enough to be comfortable. She wanted me hungry and focused. The contracts were signed within a week, and Nexus Stays officially existed. The first property was a disaster waiting to be transformed: an abandoned historic building in Philadelphia, a former department store that had been empty for 5 years. The architecture was magnificent bones of something grand beneath decades of neglect. While Sterling fought over premium real estate in oversaturated markets, I saw opportunity in forgotten spaces. Grace's funding covered the purchase and initial renovation, but barely. I needed a team, and I couldn't afford industry veterans. Instead, I found hungry outsiders like myself. Maya, a brilliant programmer who'd been laid off from a tech giant for being too innovative. Carlos, an interior designer whose radical ideas had gotten him blacklisted from traditional firms. Amy, a marketing genius who'd quit corporate life to backpack through Asia and came back with revolutionary hospitality insights. We worked 18-hour days, sometimes longer. I learned to lay tile at 3 in the morning because we couldn't afford more contractors. Maya coded our proprietary system while sitting on paint buckets. Carlos sourced materials from architectural salvage yards, creating luxury from things others had thrown away. Amy built our social media presence with nothing but an iPhone and creativity. The secret weapon came from an unexpected source. Miguel had been Sterling's head of operations for 5 years, one of the few people who knew how good I really was. When Diana fired him for questioning her methods, he called me immediately. I hired him that day, and he brought invaluable intelligence about Sterling's weaknesses and opportunities they were missing. Our proprietary software was the game changer. While Sterling's online booking system looked like it hadn't been updated since 2005, ours learned from every interaction. It remembered guest preferences, anticipated needs, suggested experiences. The virtual concierge could handle requests in 40 languages, make reservations, arrange transportation, even detect when a guest might be having issues, and proactively offer solutions. 6 months after signing that lease, we soft-launched with a carefully selected group of influencers and tech entrepreneurs, people who would appreciate innovation and had audiences who trusted their opinions. The building itself told a story. Original architectural details, preserved and highlighted with modern technology. Rooms that adjusted lighting and temperature based on guest biorhythms. Bathrooms with smart mirrors that displayed news weather or meditation guides. Workspaces that transformed into entertainment centers with voice commands. The first month exceeded every projection. 95% occupancy when the industry average was 70. Guest satisfaction scores that didn't just beat Sterling properties but destroyed them. Reviews that went viral, people calling it the future of hospitality, the hotel that actually understood them. The second property in Boston opened 4 months later. We'd learned from Philadelphia, moved faster, made fewer mistakes. The third in Washington, D.C. came just 3 months after that. Each property was unique but connected by the same DNA of innovation and genuine care for guest experience. Then came the partnership that changed everything. A major airline approached us wanting to recommend Nexus Stays exclusively to their premium passengers. The deal was worth millions in guaranteed bookings. The same week, our proprietary software system received an offer from an unnamed buyer, $10 million for non-exclusive rights to use our code. The unnamed buyer Miguel discovered was Sterling Heritage Hotels. Diana was panicking. I could see it in her LinkedIn activity, constantly checking my profile, though we weren't connected. Sterling's stock had dropped 15% in 6 months. Customer complaints about outdated facilities and poor technology integration were going viral. The industry press that once fawned over them was now asking why they couldn't keep up with innovation. TechCrunch ran a feature calling us the startup disrupting luxury hospitality. They interviewed me for 3 hours, and I never mentioned Sterling once. I didn't have to. Everyone in the industry knew where I'd come from and why I'd left. The story wrote itself, and it was more powerful for what went unsaid. Year 2 brought exponential growth. 10 properties across the East Coast, each one strategically placed to compete with Sterling locations. Our valuation hit $50 million after a second round of funding. We weren't just succeeding. We were setting new standards for what hospitality could be. The talent drain from Sterling to Nexus became embarrassing for them. Every time Diana's cost-cutting measures led to layoffs, I was there with better offers for their best people. They brought institutional knowledge, industry relationships, and a hunger to work for someone who valued them. The employee equity program I created meant everyone owned a piece of what we were building. When we succeeded, everyone succeeded. Diana tried everything to stop us. Anonymous negative reviews appeared in clusters, all with similar language. Miguel traced them back to IP addresses at Sterling headquarters. She tried poaching our people with inflated offers, but they weren't interested in going backward. She even attempted to block our permits in certain cities using Sterling's political connections. I documented everything. Every sabotage attempt, every dirty trick, every desperate move to stop what couldn't be stopped. Not for revenge, but for protection. I knew at some point they'd overplay their hand, and I'd need proof of their behavior. The suite in my Philadelphia property became my permanent home. I could have afforded something grander, but I wanted to live where I worked, to experience what guests experienced, to never forget that hospitality was about serving others, not serving ego. Every morning I'd walk through the lobby, talk to guests, listen to staff make improvements. Everything Diana never did from her executive tower. The industry awards started coming. Innovator of the Year, Disruptor Award, Best New Hospitality Brand. Each trophy went on a shelf in our employee break room, not my office. These belonged to everyone who'd believed in the vision, when it was just sketches on coffee shop napkins. The Sterling Empire started crumbling faster than anyone expected. Miguel kept me informed through his network of former Sterling employees still trapped there. The information painted a picture of desperation and dysfunction that would have been satisfying if it wasn't so predictable. Diana's husband Keith, the one she'd been grooming for my position, had been using his access to company accounts for personal gain. The FBI investigation started quietly, but quickly escalated when they discovered he'd embezzled nearly $3 million over 2 years. Diana claimed ignorance, but the forensic accountants found transfers she'd authorized, purchases she'd approved, a clear trail of complicity or incompetence. Marcus's cocaine problem, an open secret in the industry, finally went public when he was arrested at a supplier's party. The photos were everywhere, the Sterling heir in handcuffs, pupils dilated, ranting about being untouchable. The board demanded his resignation, but Father refused, creating a civil war in leadership that paralyzed decision-making. Father's minor heart attack happened during a particularly brutal board meeting where investors demanded explanations for Sterling's 40% value loss. The stress of watching his empire collapse while his children destroyed each other was literally killing him. Mother called me from the hospital, begging me to come see him, to forgive, to help save the family business. "I'm not family, remember," I replied, using words they'd made clear for years. "I'm just support staff." Diana's attempts to sell properties to raise capital backfired spectacularly. Buyers knew she was desperate and offered insulting prices. The Miami property I'd turned around was now failing again under her management. The flagship New York hotel had a bedbug scandal that went viral on social media. Every move she made somehow made things worse. Meanwhile, I was quietly buying Sterling's debt through shell companies. Every loan they couldn't pay, every credit line they'd maxed out, I acquired at discounts. Grace thought I was crazy at first, investing so heavily in distressed debt from a failing company. Then she understood my strategy and doubled our war chest. My hiring spree accelerated. Every talented person Sterling let go received an offer from Nexus within 24 hours. Their best chef, their award-winning spa director, their entire digital marketing team all came to us with valuable knowledge and grateful hearts. We weren't just building a better company, we were building it with the best parts of theirs. The vendors Sterling had relationships with for decades started calling me. Payment delays, broken contracts, disrespect from Diana's team. I offered them better terms, guaranteed payments, and actual appreciation for their work. One by one, Sterling's support network became ours. The moment I realized I could acquire them came during a late-night strategy session. My CFO, hired away from a competitor Sterling had wronged, laid out the numbers. With our funding, our credit, and the debt we already owned, we could execute a hostile takeover. We could buy Sterling Heritage Hotels. The irony was perfect. The assistant manager they'd dismissed, the support staff they'd humiliated, would become their owner. But this wasn't about irony or even revenge anymore. Sterling had valuable assets, prime real estate, and salvageable brands. Under competent leadership, those properties could thrive again. Under my leadership, investment banks started approaching me, having heard rumors of our interest. They saw the opportunity, a dynamic young company absorbing an established but failing competitor. The math worked, the strategy was sound, the narrative was compelling. They competed to offer the best terms for financing the acquisition. Diana's sabotage attempts became increasingly desperate and sloppy. She hired a hacker to try to crash our booking system. We traced it back to her personal laptop. She spread rumors about safety issues at our properties. We had inspectors give us perfect scores and publish them widely. She even tried to seduce one of my board members, who recorded the entire embarrassing encounter. Mother visited me one night alone, looking older than her 60 years. She sat in my office, taking in the view of Philadelphia's skyline, and cried. "We failed you," she admitted. "I failed you. We let pride and tradition blind us to what was right in front of us." I let her cry, offering tissues, but not forgiveness. Some wounds were too deep for simple apologies. Some betrayals couldn't be undone with tears. But I listened because, unlike them, I still had empathy. The acquisition plan moved forward quietly. My legal team prepared documents, secured financing, aligned board support. We would announce it publicly, giving Sterling's board a choice to accept our offer, or watch their stock price collapse further. Either way, I would win. The only question was how much Diana would lose in the process. The night before the announcement, I stood in my office looking at the city lights, thinking about the journey from that cold studio apartment to this moment. Diana had been wrong. I hadn't lasted a week without them. I'd lasted 3 years and built something that would swallow their legacy whole. The morning of the acquisition announcement dawned clear and cold. I dressed carefully in the boardroom, the same one where I'd been humiliated 3 years earlier. This time, I entered as the majority shareholder of Sterling Heritage Hotel's owner of the empire that was supposed to be my prison. Security stood at the door, but not to escort me out. They were there to escort Diana out if necessary. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, especially the employees who remembered my humiliation. Some of them smiled, others looked away ashamed of their complicity in the past. The board meeting was scheduled for 9. By 8:45, everyone was seated except Diana, who stormed in at 8:59 designer heels, clicking against marble face, twisted with rage she could barely contain. She'd heard the news an hour before when her assistant, one of my former allies, had shown her the press release. "How dare you!" she hissed. But the board chairman himself, fed up with the Sterling family drama, told her to sit down and listen. I presented my transformation plan, the same one I'd shown them 3 years ago, now proven successful across 10 Nexus properties. The AI-driven pricing had generated 30% more revenue at our locations. The virtual concierge had won industry awards. The partnerships I'd proposed were now exclusive to Nexus, and Sterling would have to buy into our system. The numbers were undeniable. Under my leadership, Sterling Properties would be profitable within 6 months, thriving within a year. The board had two choices: accept my generous offer, which was more than the company's current value, or refuse, and watch me systematically destroy what was left of their market share. Father sat at the far end of the table, unable to meet my eyes. The man who'd built an empire from nothing now had to watch his dismissed daughter save it from his chosen heirs. His shoulders shook, though, whether from shame or anger, I couldn't tell. Marcus attempted reconciliation with the desperation of a drowning man. "Pauline, we're family," he pleaded. "We can work together." "I have ideas, connections. You'll need someone who knows these properties intimately." I turned to him slowly. "You mean like an assistant manager who worked every property for 12 years? Someone who knows every employee, every system, every strength and weakness?" I paused, letting it sink in. "Someone exactly like who I used to be, and who you dismissed. Diana's meltdown came as expected, but was spectacular in its scope." She stood designer bag clutched like a weapon, voice rising to near screech levels. "You destroyed everything," she screamed. "You plotted this from the beginning. You're nothing but a vindictive, jealous little nobody who couldn't handle being second best." The board watched in horrified fascination as she unraveled, revealing the ugly core of entitlement that had rotted Sterling from within. I remained calm, seated, hands folded on the table. "No, Diana," I said when she finally stopped for breath. "I built something better. You destroyed yourselves. You had everything, every advantage, every opportunity, and you wasted it on ego and cruelty. I didn't plot anything. I just refused to be your stepping stone anymore." I pulled out my phone and played a recording of her recent sabotage attempts, her voice clear as she instructed someone to plant negative reviews, to hack our systems, to spread lies about our safety standards. The board members' faces went from uncomfortable to appalled. "This is who you chose to run Sterling," I said to Father. "This is the brilliant firstborn you trusted with your legacy, a criminal who commits corporate espionage when she can't compete fairly." I offered Diana a position, the same position I'd held. Regional assistant manager, 70,000 salary, reporting to someone who actually knew how to run a hotel. She could learn the business from the ground up the way I had, but with better pay and more respect than she'd ever shown me. Her refusal was violent. Papers flew, a chair toppled, security stepped forward. She stormed out, screaming threats about lawsuits, about family loyalty, about how I'd regret this. But we all knew she was done. No one would hire her after this display, after the evidence of her crimes, after the industry watched her family's company choose her sister over her. I spent the rest of the day in town halls with Sterling employees. No layoffs for anyone who performed, I promised. New training programs, better benefits, employee equity options. The same people who'd watched me escorted out 3 years ago now applauded my return. Some cried apologizing for not standing up for me then. I told them I understood. We all did what we had to do to survive. Mother came to my office that evening. She looked smaller, somehow diminished by the weight of her complicity. She cried again, real tears this time, not the theatrical ones she used to manipulate father. I forgive you, I told her, because I need to let go of that anger. But I'll never forget. You chose them over me every single time. You watched them humiliate me and told me to endure it. You can be part of my life, but you'll never be part of my decisions again. The media coverage was everything Diana feared. From cast-out sister to corporate conqueror, read one headline: The Thanksgiving Revenge. How one woman bought the family business that rejected her, read another. But the best was from the same industry magazine that had once featured Diana's stolen success, the real sterling Pauline's 3-year journey from invisible to invincible. I kept some properties under the Sterling Heritage brand, the ones with historical significance that deserved preservation. The rest became Nexus properties, transformed into the innovative spaces I'd always envisioned. The flagship New York hotel where I'd been humiliated so many times became our crown jewel, a testament to what happened when talent was recognized instead of suppressed. 6 months after the acquisition, the combined company was valued at $500 million. Every projection I'd made had been exceeded. The sterling properties that had been failing were now thriving. The culture of fear and favoritism had been replaced with innovation and merit. Diana worked at a small motel in Kansas, the only place that would hire her after her public meltdown and criminal investigations. The irony was perfect. She was doing the same job she'd mocked me for in a place where the sterling name meant nothing. I heard through industry contacts that she was terrible at it, unable to handle actual work without someone to delegate to. Marcus was in rehab his third attempt, this one quietly funded by me, through an anonymous donation to the facility. Not out of love, but out of pity. He'd never been evil like Diana, just weak and enabled. Perhaps without the sterling pressure and privilege, he might find out who he really was. Father retired to write his memoir, though I doubted it would ever be published. Who wanted to read about a man who built an empire, but failed to recognize the daughter who could have saved it sooner? He sent me letters, sometimes apologies, wrapped in justifications seeking absolution. I wasn't ready to give. The scholarship program I created specifically targeted undervalued employees in family businesses. Every year, we'd sponsor 10 people to get advanced degrees, start their own companies, or develop skills their families didn't think they deserved. The first recipient was a young woman whose brothers ran the family restaurant, while she did all the actual work. Sound familiar, I told her. Change it. My new partner understood my journey because she'd lived her own version of it. Sarah had been dismissed from her family's tech company for being too ambitious, which apparently was threatening when you weren't the chosen son. We met at an industry conference where I was speaking about transformation through adversity. She approached me afterward and said, "You didn't burn their empire down. You built your own and let theirs collapse from irrelevance." She was right. The real revenge wasn't destruction, but creation. Every successful quarter at Nexus Sterling proved that merit mattered more than birthright. Every innovation we launched showed that the future belonged to those who earned it, not those who expected it. The company culture I built was everything Sterling never had. Transparent promotions based on performance, open-door policies that actually meant open doors, profit sharing that ensured everyone benefited from success, family-inclusive policies that recognized people had lives outside work, the anti-Sterling in every way that mattered. Young employees would sometimes ask about my family having Googled the drama. I told them the truth. Family isn't about blood or obligation or tradition. It's about respect, support, and shared values. The 300 people who worked at Nexus Sterling were more family to me than the people who shared my DNA but never shared my vision. The Phoenix sculpture in my office came from an artist in Philadelphia who'd heard my story. She created it from pieces of the old Sterling headquarters sign, the one that had been taken down during renovations. The metal letters that once spelled out Sterling heritage had been melted and reformed into a bird rising from flames. It was perfect. I thought about Diana's words often. You wouldn't last a week without us. She'd been right in a way she never intended. I didn't last a week. I lasted 3 years. 3 years of building, growing, learning, becoming someone they never thought I could be. 3 years of turning rejection into rocket fuel. The best part, this wasn't even the end. At 37, I had decades ahead to build, to innovate, to lift others up the way no one had lifted me. The empire I'd built from nothing would outlast the one built on nepotism. The values I'd instilled would outlive the traditions that had nearly destroyed me. Looking at the city lights from my office, I realized something profound. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destroying those who doubted you. It's building something so magnificent that their doubt becomes irrelevant. When family treats you like staff, remember that employees can quit, but they can also become the competition. The empire you build from rejection will always be stronger than the one built on privilege. Every person watching this who's been dismissed, diminished, or disrespected by people who should have supported you know this. Your worth isn't determined by their recognition. Your potential isn't limited by their imagination. Your future isn't controlled by their past. They said I was just support staff. They were right. I supported myself into an empire they couldn't have imagined. So let me ask you, if you've ever been told you're not enough, what are you building to prove them wrong? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the overlooked one who became the overcomer, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Share it with someone who needs to hear that their current dismissal might be their future triumph. Thank you for listening to my journey from invisible to invincible. Remember, the best revenge is massive success, and the best success is the one they never saw coming.